Elegy for my sadness. Maybe the centipede in the cellar knows with its many disgusting legs why I am sad. No one else does. I want to be a sweetheart in every moment, full of goats and xylophones, as charming as a hill with a small village on it. I want to be a village full of sweethearts, as you are, every second of the day, cooking me soups and drawing me pictures and holding me, my inexplicable and elephant sadness, with your infinite arms.
From PBS NewsHour Student Reporting Labs
and WETA,
this is On Our Minds
with Ashley
and Tyler,
a podcast about the teenage experience made by teenagers for teenagers.
Because we all need a place to feel heard. Hey Ashley.
Hi Tyler.
I'm so excited for you. You got to talk to one of your favorite poets of all time, Chen Chen, a Chinese-American poet and educator. What was it like talking to him?
It was honestly just such an incredible experience. I think also the stories that he tells are very important because if you look at a lot of his poetry, a lot of them he draws from his own experiences as a queer Chinese-American. I always think it's so important to see these kinds of stories, and I think that it really helps a lot of people, including me and so many of my friends, really feel heard.
Yeah, definitely. It's so important to make sure that everybody's represented in all kinds of media. Being able to see yourself on media, or on TV, on the internet, on the news, it's such a great experience, and it's really something that opens a lot of people's eyes. Let's take a listen to some of your conversation with him.
Thank you so much for talking to me today. This is so much of an honor. Like, I can't even believe I'm talking to you. That's how crazy this is to me.
Yeah, I'm so happy to be here. And yeah, thanks for having me.
I just want to say that as a fellow queer Chinese American poet, I feel so connected to your writing. I think your writing has really said so much to me that I maybe at the time didn't even know I needed to hear. So I just want to say thank you.
That means so much to me because, yeah, I grew up very lonely in a bunch of ways and didn't think sometimes that there would even be a reader for my work.
First, I just wanted to ask how and when you first started writing poetry.
So I was always interested in writing from a very young age, and I would write stories, actually, a lot of fiction. And I would say a lot of it was pretty bad fan fiction and mashups of stuff that I really enjoyed. And then later on, starting in high school, I read poetry, some collections on my own. And part of that came from just exploring the local library. And this was when I was in the Boston area and had some really wonderful English teachers in high school who would recommend certain writers to me. So I didn't really focus on poetry until the later part of college. So I started to write more about my own family, our immigration, writing about queerness and relationships and friendships, and more politically overt work too. So it started there, but I think I always return to that initial joy of, playing with words and making things out of words.
I wanted to ask if you would like to read a poem.
Yeah, let me read this one. The poem is called Study Abroad, and it's set in Hefei, China.
Oh, I remember this one.
Your white classmates treat you like a dictionary with legs, and sometimes you like it. Some nights a taxi driver treats you like a local, and you love it. And then you speak a full sentence. Then he says, you're from Fujian province. Then you nod, because nodding is easier than saying, well, actually, and Massachusetts, and close to Boston, and also Amherst, and all 5 Backstreet Boys, and originally my father was considering Australia, and the exoskeleton of a wronged lobster, and Costco, and my mother in Costco considering a lobster, and a year or so in Texas, and I was born here but grew up there, and I grew up there but was born of soup, both mung bean and primordial, and in the future, when I'm writing this, I'll be back in Texas, where some will say, welcome back, some go back, and now it's time to get out of the taxi, begin to walk back to the dorms. Walking, you whisper lines from the Tao Te Ching, then from the latest pop song. In lamplight, you soft sing to a tall audience of trees. You're in touch with the way, as well as the wants of boys, flaunting such innovative hair. And the trees give off a silvery smell that's become your entire summer. You walk slowly. You try to ask the smell what these trees are called.
Woo! Oh my god. Okay. I'm having my fangirl moment. Okay, sorry. Thank you so much. I wanted to ask, what do you believe the value of poetry is, and what do you think poetry can provide for young people especially?
I think poetry is vital. Yeah, as a teacher, what I find so powerful is witnessing and getting to contribute to someone's growth as a writer, and to see that that means not just craft, not just technique, but how they come to value their own lives more deeply, how they value their own imagination more deeply. They value their own knowledge. That's incredible to me, priceless, really. But, for instance, working with students who are econ or business majors and they come into a poetry class and it's something that they've actually been craving, this outlet to be creative and just to reflect, just to have a meditative space in which they can slow down and not feel like, oh, I have to complete this task in order to get this other thing so that I can get this job eventually, etc. But that they can think about, oh, this conversation I had with my grandmother or with a childhood friend that I've reconnected with. And, oh, maybe I can bring in another language, it doesn't have to all be in English. That is so beautiful and important to me, that embracing of the life and knowledge that you already have.
Your poetry is often very personal. You've explored so many themes, from love to childhood to sexuality to religion to culture to such a wide plethora. 2 questions. How does poetry affect your mental health, and how do you find the courage to be vulnerable in your writing?
Yeah, I think like many writers, I make a pretty clear distinction between poetry as an artistic practice versus actual therapy, which I've also benefited from, and I'm a great proponent of going to therapy. I think we need as much support as we can get, really, when life continues to be so complicated and difficult and grief-filled, in the ongoing pandemic. Like, we need to support one another and continue to build support systems. So, yeah, poetry and mental health. I think for me, it's a part of how I process experiences, for sure, but it's not the only way, So sometimes that happens through conversations with friends or with my partner. I may also journal a lot, and I find that very helpful because I'm just someone who tends to think and process things better, maybe to some extent, in written form, although I am also a big talker. So it's both. I think I write in order to allow myself to be more vulnerable and more honest, because even though it might seem like oh, I'm sharing things very directly in poems, or it might seem like there isn't a lot of effort behind that. There is. I go through a lot of drafts, a lot of revisions, a lot of false starts and starting over and rethinking how to approach a subject.
In your poetry, you've often talked about how your parents had wanted you to go into a bit of a different career, a more traditional path in that sense. And I think that I and many other children of immigrants, and I guess teens in general, can understand the pressure to follow these more traditional career paths. What would you say to teenagers who might be looking to pursue paths that might be more alternative or simply just not what they or other people expected them to do?
I understand very much where my parents are coming from with that. You know, as immigrant parents, they've made all these sacrifices, right, for our family to be here in the US, and they've had to like rebuild their lives from the ground up, basically. And they know what it's like to struggle and be very financially precarious. It takes a lot of stubbornness to carve your own path in response to that familial pressure. I mean, I just knew that I would be writing in some way or another my whole life. And I think I knew that actually pretty early on, but maybe avoided pursuing it fully, either out of fear, my own internal fear, or responding to my parents' expectations of like, okay, maybe I'll try some other things, all the while knowing in my heart that I wanted to be a writer, and if possible to make that like the center of my life and not just something I did in addition to a so-called real job or something more stable.
We're gonna take a quick break to play a bit more of Chen Chen's poetry. At the start of this episode, we included the beginning of Chen's poem, Elegy for My Sadness. Here's the ending to that poem.
Now I am in love with you, though sometimes terribly sad for no good reason, and not so much angry as guilty when you say to me, don't cry, don't be sad, as if my sadness could sink this room, this apartment, this whole city, not Paris. But does my sadness always need to be your sadness? I wish I could write an elegy for my sadness because it has suddenly died. I wish I could mourn it by kissing you again and again while neither of us can stop laughing, a kind of kiss where we sometimes miss the mouth altogether, a kind of kiss I think every single dead person in every part of the world must crave with violent impossibility.
As a writer, what do you hope that readers take away from your writing?
I hope my work returns people to themselves in some surprising way. Like in a way that before reading, they couldn't have expected that, oh, I would feel this way about something from my own life, something from my own experience, or how I remember something, or how I want to talk to someone. And if they can find something surprising and nourishing from it, then that is the best thing of all.
If you could talk to your teenage self, what would you tell him?
So I would tell my teenage self to trust that instinct, that, oh, this is something you love, clearly, and you experience so much joy from it and from sharing it with others. So I would say, despite all the pressures, from family or from school or from peers, to focus on so-called more practical matters. I'd say it's great that you're so invested in imagination and words, and that you'll also find more and more people who are just as passionate as you are. And importantly, you'll find people who are also queer Chinese American readers and writers who will just lift you up, or commiserate with you. I would tell him that, yeah, it's not that you won't feel lonely again, you will, but you'll have so many ways to address that and be in community too. Yeah.
Your poetry is so incredibly excellent, and I think to some degree it's really changed my life and my own approach to creativity. And so I can't thank you enough, and thank you so much for speaking with me. This has been such an honor.
It's an honor and a joy for me. Thank you.
This was such a great conversation. I really love the way that you guys connected, and I admire his pursuance to his craft and his dedication to his work.
It was so cool, and you know what? Part of me still doesn't think it really happened. But then I look at the hour-long audio file on my computer, and I remember, yeah, it does.
Next up, relationships.
Yeah, we interviewed relationship experts from the organization One Love about how to recognize unhealthy relationships and how to build just better and healthier relationships with other people. Look out for that in 2 weeks.
And after that, teen stories about love and friendship. This episode was produced and edited by Rawan Elbaba with help from lead podcast producer Briget Ganske.
Editorial director Marie Kusick and executive producer Leah Clapman.
Theme music by Jackson Teedens.
Additional music by Blue Dot Sessions.
If you or someone you know needs help, we have a list of resources at studentreportinglabs.org/mental health resources.